My name is Dave Brooks. I serve with the CRM return team here in New England. I got a call from a colleague that we work with and telling me that there was a need for probably an assessment to come at Christ Community Church, a church that at that time was about 330 people. We had launched into a building program, a lot of excitement, but also concern about a character issue that had come before the elders, and several of the people in the church were concerned about. And so the leadership of the church called our partners in, and they met and decided that really, the leadership decided they really want to do an assessment, interview the people. And I was a part of that assessment, and that's how I became aware of the issues of the church. The issue was one of many people in the church being concerned about an inappropriate relationship between the pastor and one or two women in the church. And the way it was discovered was that many people in the church were so concerned that they either personally went to the pastor or they went to members of the leadership team. And over several months, so many people came to the leadership team that the leadership team realized they needed some help in finding out really what was going on. Leadership realized they were in over their heads and needed some objective advice about how to move forward. And an assessment team went in and interviewed the people in the church. About 70% of the people in the church did forums, personal interviews, interviewed the youth. Quite an extensive assessment. It covered almost a week's time. And at the end of that assessment, as is often the case in assessments like this, the team leader that did the assessment recommended that CRM, a person from CRM, come in and follow the assessment and serve as intentional interim pastor. Losing their pastor or seeing their pastor leave caused a lot of hurt and a lot of anger, a lot of discouragement and brokenness among the people. To have someone serve them for so long and to be so let down. There was probably 6 or even more, 6 or 8 months of grieving. Just unthinkable that this could happen. And during those first 3-4 months of the intentional interim period, it was a time to prepare the people to come into a time of corporate confession and owning the things that they had done that they knew were wrong. The leadership was able to own that they had not seen things correctly and that they had indeed tried to protect the pastor and really not listened well to what people were saying to them. And they owned that before all the people. And then some of the people began to come and actually confess how they had failed the pastor and how they'd failed one another. So the real beginning of the healing in this church came through that time of corporate confession. And once that confession came, it was like they were in a brand new place now, ready for a new start. Whenever an assessment is done, often, almost always, there are specific recommendations in that assessment for an intentional interim pastor to follow. And the ministry that we worked with had laid out many recommendations, believing that if the church embraced those recommendations, then they would be healthy at the end of that process if they were to follow those recommendations. And the church decided to embrace them. One of them was that period of corporate confession. And another one was putting a stewardship team in place. One recommendation had to do with ceasing any activity on the building program and getting an accounting of all that had gone on there. And so we put some teams in place. We put a stewardship team in place. The intentional interim pastor worked very closely with the elders to help them through this process, to help them to move from really from being board elders to shepherd elders, to really care for the people and come alongside of them, which they did very well. We did personality profiles. We did all kinds of training to help the people now focus on a new focused new vision. And God was faithful to bring that vision to them over a period of about a year to 18 months. One of the things that was difficult for the people at this particular church was that they felt like their intentional interim pastor, being me, was a little bit aloof, probably was quite aloof, and wondering, does he really care about us? And they told me that, and I grew through that, and I realized this is a very loving church. But the flip side of that as an interim pastor is that you have to keep some boundaries because you realize you're only going to be there for a season, and you don't want people to become so attached to you that you go through the same having to detach before they attach the next pastor. I was just there for a season to serve them a particular purpose, which was to help them to get from where they were to their preferable future with a new pastor. One of the key aspects of that is how they discovered their next pastor. One of the primary roles of an intentional interim pastor is to come alongside of a church search team, search committee, and help them process how to do a search and what kind of questions to ask and what to look for, and to encourage them, because searches can take a long time. And in this particular case, we had a wonderful committee of committed people, very prayerful. And this church, actually, the chair of the search team wrote out a prayer for the whole church to pray concerning the search of their next pastor. After several months into the search committee was very excited to think they may have a candidate to present to the elders. And as often happens, is at that point that the intentional interim gets involved when there's a recommendation of a candidate. And the candidate, that person, I got to see his resume and called his references, and through talking to references, it was clear to me and to those who I talked to that this would not be a good fit for him or for the church. And this was a difficult aspect of the interim, because the search committee was very hopeful, and when I had to tell them this is not a good fit for either the candidate or for you, they were really let down and felt like they had to go back to square one, which they did. Except that a man who is from the Massachusetts area had come to visit the church, and I had one brief conversation with him, had family in the area, and we had his resume as well. And it just so happened that someone on the search committee was traveling to Colorado, where this man was pastoring, and going to be in Colorado for business, and decided to go and just interview and see if he were open to coming to Massachusetts. And the long story is that he was the man that God called to this church, and he was the right man at the right time. Our heart is restoration. We want to see struggling churches healed. We want to see them thriving and growing. And so we feel like this is a tremendous privilege to go into churches that are struggling for whatever reason and come alongside of them, live with them for a season, and help them to get their balance, and beyond that, really have a vision for what can be, and help them identify the people that will work with them to take the process forward. And that happened wonderfully in this church, where they identified the right man for this church.